let me just actually begin from the very beginning. I know you actually had a chance to read everything in captions, but let me just point out once again that this is a very special individual here today with us, Faceless Francis, former agency owner with a very big agency with capabilities of scaling creators from zero to top 0.01%, now consulting, doing courses, and actually a very experienced guy. And I'm excited to ask multiple questions here. So just to begin with, this what we've just started, and we almost got there. The first question out of my personal curiosity about being faceless and building a brand this way. Was it a decision made from day one, or you evolved into this? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was absolutely a day one decision. I knew that I was not going to do this with my face. And there were, I would say, three major reasons for that. There's one fun reason, one practical reason, and one kind of serious reason. So the practical reason is, as an OnlyFans manager, I'm sure many people listening can kind of empathize with this. Our job is, in some sense, especially if you're a vertically scaling agency like I was, your job is to make people famous and to build brands for them. And so I got to witness and create firsthand brands that were responsible for making my clients millions of dollars. And it's very difficult to do that for any period of time and not ask yourself, why am I not just doing this for myself? So that was kind of the origin of the idea. I knew that I wanted to get out of management. I fully wound down the agency in September of last year. And I knew that I wanted to pivot into consulting or info, something where I got to work with other entrepreneurs, as opposed to talent, which the talent management side of the business can be obviously very stressful, fraying at your sanity. And the way that I constructed my agency, there was a lot of like personal contact with models. And so I knew that I wanted to do the consulting thing. I knew that I wanted to launch a personal brand and that I wasn't going to be able to do that without having a personal brand. And I also knew that I didn't want to show my face. So that was the kind of the practical consideration. The fun part, I think, is something to the effect of it's challenging, right? I think that everybody sort of naturally associates brand with, especially personal brand. You think of somebody like Alex Hormozy. There's very distinctive sort of physical elements about that. You can immediately picture his face in your head if you've seen him even, one or two times. And so I wanted to ask the question of, is it possible to build a personal brand that can support a legitimate business without ever having actually showed my face? So I think that, I'm now, let's call it like almost half a year into that experiment, and things are going extremely well. So I think that things are growing much faster than I had originally anticipated. So I'm answering my question. I think I'm fulfilling that challenge. Things are really starting to come to fruition. So that's been fun. And then the serious, like not so practical thing is privacy was always mandatory for me. I'm an extremely private person by nature. I always have been. So even prior to being in this industry, I was always very careful to like manage my identity and reduce the amount of surface area for people to be able to find me. It's just something that's always been on my mind. And I think especially in our business, and we can talk about this later because I think we'll probably have a conversation about ethics. I think the OnlyFans management industry and OnlyFans in general will not be looked kindly upon by the world. The business is fundamentally sort of exploitative of weak and vulnerable people, often people who live on the fringes of society and are sometimes mentally unwell, potentially even dangerous. And I think that there's a very, very, very low probability, obviously there's like no major incidences of anybody being hurt, especially in the management industry. So it seems to me like it's relatively safe. From my perspective, the consideration is not necessarily for myself. It's more like I made a decision to be in this industry. I made a decision to, I've made my peace with what we do. I'm comfortable operating in, let's call it, morally gray territory. But there are people that I very much love and care about in my life who are not involved in that decision, who did not make that decision. And so if there's even a tiny, 0.0000001% chance that some disgruntled gooner might, try to hurt me by hurting somebody that I care about, that to me is an unacceptable risk. So that's the more like serious, not so fun, hopefully not putting a damper on the conversation answer. But I would say those are the three major considerations kind of going into this.
Wow, that is a straightforward, direct, and honest answer in such many details. Indeed, it does help in terms of safety, protecting your closest ones and your privacy. I definitely see uh, how reasonable it can be for sure. And does it actually help, or does it make it more difficult to, build the trust and build a business without this like personal identity involved in it? Is it like more challenging this way, or it's just a myth?
I think so. It's an interesting question. I think that most people come from the perspective of like faceless, in our industry, faceless OnlyFans creators tend to make less than creators who are kind of willing to show it all. And so we approach that as an inherent trade-off of, well, if you're not willing to divulge your identity, then you're necessarily saying I'm going to make less money in this business. But I think my experience at least has been that there's not really like a reduction in trust in this industry specifically. I think people get it, right? Like most of the people who are guests on my podcast also elect not to show their faces, probably for similar reasons. And so when if you're in the industry and you understand everything that it entails, I think you see a guy in a mask and you think, oh, that's interesting, as opposed to like, why is he hiding? Like this guy seems untrustworthy. And then, excuse me, the other element of that is in business, I think you build trust through results, right? So even though I don't show my face, like I have a personal brand, like Faceless Francis is my personal brand, my brand identity. And if I screw somebody over or I deliver a subpar product or I'm difficult to work with, even though my face isn't associated with my brand, that's still going to follow me, right? So I'm very customer obsessed. So in my consulting practice, I'm obsessed with, my objective is always like, if you're not getting a minimum of 10 times the value of what you pay for my consulting service, and this is true of basically anything that I produce, that's kind of my North Star is, if you're not getting a 10x multiple on what you pay me in the long run, then I've done you dirty. And so I think that people feel that. I think that most of my customers, obviously they've experienced that level of result. I'm always following up with people. So yeah, I think that ultimately, no, the mask doesn't necessarily hurt my ability to build the business in the way that I want it to, or hurt people's ability to trust me, because at the end of the day, if I'm helping you make more money, who really cares what I look like?
Indeed, yes, I find it absolutely reasonable. And the way you help people, it doesn't really change the business model itself. And also having this brand identity this way. I heard that it's very nice when you have just like two words needed to describe, and people just to immediately remember who we're talking about. So this is
Yeah,
definitely, yeah. Cool, cool. Okay. I think we are ready to dive a bit deeper into business perspective of all that. And
sure.
I would like to go, straight forward to the most interesting part. You say that you help creators go from zero to top 0.01% with organic social, right? So what does organic really mean in 2026?
I don't think the definition has really changed. I just think the way that we think about it maybe has. So organic social historically in marketing has always, or sorry, organic in general,
Mhm.
organic marketing in general is just advertising that you don't pay for, right? So historically that has looked like referrals. That's looked like word of mouth, where people really like your product, they tell other people about it. It's free advertising. And so organic today obviously includes organic social, and we have these incredible social media platforms that have over 3 billion monthly active users that are distributed all around the world. And if you are good at creating content, they will find your perfect customer, they will deliver your advertisements directly to that customer at scale, and then your customer will actually enjoy, again, assuming that you're good at it. And I think that this is a big problem in the OFM industry, and it's something that I'm like obsessively focused on in both my content and my business is getting people to understand how important the good content part of that equation is. We have these platforms that are willing to serve your content to potentially billions of people at zero cost. And to me, that has to be just the highest leverage marketing opportunity in the history of capitalism. I can't think of anything more insane than being able to reach potentially half of the Earth's population and you pay nothing except the effort that you put into the piece of content. So that's what organic means in 2026. At least that's my definition. That's how I frame it. And that's like my kind of overall philosophy regarding marketing, especially for OFM.
And this is exactly what you help agencies with on these courses, and I assume like many other things involved as well. But being an expert in this is definitely important. I personally heard so many agency owners say that organic is the most relevant growth method, and being good at it is absolutely necessary. But do you see that OFM is rather a like media business or more of a talent business or maybe a distribution business?
Um, I think it's a complicated question because I think if you had asked me that, let's say 18 months ago, I would have said talent, and without even thinking about it, it's a talent business 100%. And the people that tend to perform the best are the ones who have the work ethic, who have the natural, let's call it like charisma. There's the physical appearance component, talking on the model side, of course. But I think that is increasingly less the case with AI, and I would love to talk about that for sure.
Mhm.
So I think that the media and the distribution piece also now mean the same thing. I think that especially at least from my perspective on organic social, obviously those have different connotations if you're talking about paid ads or affiliate marketing. But in the context of this conversation and in the context of organic social, media and distribution mean roughly the same thing in the sense that if your media, like your ability to distribute your media is entirely predicated on how good you are at producing media. So if you are producing consistently, let's call it like 7 out of 10 content on all of the major social platforms, you are going to blow up. But if you only focus on, let's say, the distribution side, and you're just like, how can I get as much content as possible out there without any consideration to the quality of that content? So let's just do like some ballpark number bullshit thing here. So let's say you have an agency that's putting out 100 pieces of 7 out of 10 content a month, and an agency that's putting out 10,000 pieces of 3 out of 10 content every month. The first agency is going to outperform the second agency
Mhm.
because if you're putting out nothing but terrible content, the distribution algorithms on these platforms they're not going to distribute your content. It's that simple. And so the days of, I think a lot of this comes from, like a lot of the bad content piece comes from 2019 through 2023, that kind of COVID boom era where you could really make anything and it would sort of go viral. That was the era of thirst traps and dance trends and lip syncs. You can't do that anymore. The texture of social media has changed very dramatically,
Mhm.
and it's only going to continue to change in the direction that it's changing, and we can definitely talk about that too. But hopefully that wasn't too long-winded of an answer. I think today it's the media and distribution piece, and those mean the same thing.
Mhm. This is a very interesting point that you say that it's shifting, it's pivoting, and that the way you do it nowadays is different from how it used to work previously. And first of all, it's important to notice such a change. Probably you do not disclose that just like that publicly to everyone, but maybe you could give us a little sneak peek on what that could be for those who actually do it nowadays, growing their agencies, starting with a small number of creators or probably already reaching some higher numbers. They also notice, I assume, certain changes, but probably you could add some very important details to it. What would you say in terms of this shift?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I would say I'm completely comfortable. And if you watch my YouTube video, my YouTube channel, I don't gatekeep any of this information. Like I'm very comfortable giving away all this information for free. The only reason that I have that I have monetization vectors for this is, so if you take the course, for instance, um, my marketing course is a very structured, rigorous way of approaching content from start to finish in a way that, it's like, let's call it almost 20 hours of content. I can't make a 20-hour YouTube video, right? And I can't force somebody to go through 20 hours of YouTube content, start to finish. And then same thing with my consulting practice. It's more like, I don't have a problem sharing the information. It's just sharing the information in a way that is especially salient to a given creator or to a given agency. So it's taking everything that I know and curating it, or tailoring it to a specific person or organization. But the information itself, I'm completely comfortable with giving that away freely. I would say that the big change, the easiest kind of like headline explanation for the way that social media is changing, let's say 5 years ago, 2019, 2020, you had the COVID boom. That was the beginning of what we call the attention economy, right? And so everybody at that point in time was obsessed with COVID era. Everybody's sitting in their houses. They have absolutely nothing to do. They have basically unlimited attention. And when you have an unlimited amount of a resource, you're not very discerning about how that resource is spent or consumed, right? If I gave you $1 billion, at first you would probably be like, okay, here's a bunch of different things that I can do. I can do all the things that I wanted to do. But 10 years into being a billionaire, when you've done all the things that you want to do, you're probably just like, well, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to like be an alcoholic, or I'm going to buy a bunch of drugs, or I'm going to buy a yacht. Like, it stops meaning anything to you when you have infinite of something. The same is true of attention. And so during that period of social media, everybody was willing to give their attention to the Sophie Rains of the world, who are just churning out, thirst traps and TikTok dances and just, hot young women shaking ass on camera. Now we're, 6 years post COVID, and people have seen all of that stuff 10,000, 100,000 times. They're substantially less interested in it than they were at that time. And also people just have less attention to give away, right? COVID's over. Like, people went back to work, they have jobs. And so, if you think about attention as a scarce resource, after that all ended, you had, however many people were furloughed from COVID times 8 hours a day, that much attention left the attention economy. So now the biggest change, the most important thing that you can do as an agency that's involved in organic social at all, is you have to think about, the move is towards personalization. So you have to think from your customer's perspective. You have to get extremely granular about how your customer thinks, the types of things that they're interested in, and then how you integrate that with your model and her interests and her personality and her content, and find that kind of union. So the biggest piece of advice that I could give is that, like, virality is no longer the most important KPI for social media performance. It used to be the case that, like, everyone's chasing like multi-million view reels, right? Now, I think that you would much rather have an extremely dedicated but smaller audience that is focused on one specific thing. And so an example of this, you might be watching, I'm not going to say his name because I don't know if he wants me to share his name, but I have a consulting client, and his model does like business entrepreneurship ASMR. Very, very, very narrow. It's just a tiny little niche, right? There's maybe, let's call it like 50 to 100,000 people in the entire world who might be interested in something like that. But if you can he is now the pioneer of that content, right? So that model has a complete monopoly on, let's call it like entrepreneurship, motivational ASMR. So if he completely saturates that niche, he has an audience which he has completely captivated, which he has total control over. They have no alternative creator to go to for that content, and they're going to pay whatever price that they demand in order to continue producing that content, and then follow up on the back end with the OnlyFans content that's associated with that. So I think it's all about hyper personalization and really thinking about what your customer wants in a very specific and narrow way.
And that is scalable. I mean, this is something that can be applicable to multiple different creators.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is that everybody has interests, everybody has things that they like to do. And from my perspective, kind of the most overlooked thing about OnlyFans is it solves the creator monetization problem, right? So it's not clear, let's say prior to OnlyFans, you might have 1 million followers on Instagram, or you might have 1 million followers on some social media platform. It's not obvious how you actually make money from that, right? If you're like a comedy creator or something, it's like the best you can do is maybe sell tickets to a stand-up comedy show. Now, this thing called OnlyFans comes along, and you can do anything. You can create any type of content you want that corresponds to whatever your interest is, no matter how small or niche it is. And if you do it well, you now have a built-in monetization vector that comes with distribution, that's really easy to manage. You just hire an agency and they handle it for you. And then you get to make whatever kind of content you want. And I think that like that's just lost on people, and they think, they still have to do like they have to make hypersexual content that's, and ultimately audiences are not interested in that anymore. Audiences are interested in content that is tailored specifically to them and their interests. And if you're not thinking in that direction and you're still trying to mass produce hypersexual slop, you're going to fail in organic social. Like that era is over.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. Very interesting. I mean, I didn't even think of it this way. Actually, we do have some comments from chat. Listening to you, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah,
Uh,
please.
Going
Sorry,
back to
I get a
this,
little long-winded. My bad.
it's quite interesting to listen to what you say, and it's quite thoughtful and deep. And there was a comment on at the beginning of what when we were talking, like totally agree. Privacy is the most underrated luxury of the 21st century. While
For sure.
everyone's out there oversharing their breakfast, you're playing it smart. And I agree. So yeah, just a quick reminder to the audience who are listening to us right now, you are very welcome to ask your questions in chat. I will read them, and Shane is here to share his experience. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to, yeah, if you had some thoughts you wanted to ask, go ahead. And in the meantime, we were talking about the media and organic socials, and let me ask you if there is, you think, what would be the biggest misconception people have about scaling OF with organic traffic?
I think, to bring it back to, to put a hat on the rant that I just went on. I think that the biggest misconception is that you should be optimizing for virality and you should be optimizing for reach and views, as opposed to trying to discover or even create your own niche and a very narrow audience that is dedicated to your content creator. I think that like ultimately the thing that people forget is that our job is to sell a fantasy, right? And part of selling a compelling fantasy is like if you think about, again, thinking from the perspective of like, who is our target market? They're lonely guys. But lonely guys describes billions of people. It's not useful as directional information to determine, like, to make any reasonable informed decisions about marketing. So you have to think narrowly about like, okay, there's lonely guys in every industry and in every like hobby and every sort of vertical that you can imagine. Let's say the example that I like to use is, let's say that I have a model who's like kind of like an American Southern girl. She's got kind of a cowboy vibe. Um, you wouldn't put if you were to create a billboard for that model, if you were to advertise that model on a billboard, think about where you would put that billboard. You wouldn't put it in the office district downtown, right? Because the place, like in the most urban area that you can possibly imagine, in like downtown, Manhattan financial district or something like that, that type of guy is not interested in that type of girl. What you want to do is match your audience's desires and expectations with the model. So where would you put that advertisement for the sexy cowgirl or whatever? You'd put it in a trailer park. You would find low income areas. You would put it on highways where truckers are driving by. Um, and so right now, I think what's happening is people see social media as like, oh, it's this billboard and I want the most possible people to see it. So I'm going to put it in the busiest metropolitan area that I possibly can. And all that does is, okay, yeah, people might see the billboard, but they're not going to convert. They're not going to buy your model's content. They're not going to subscribe. And so what good does it do you if that model gets 1 million, 10 million views on a single reel if your conversion on that reel is zero, right? So thinking from the big shift that everybody has to kind of undergo is thinking from the perspective of not how can I get the most views, but how can I drive the most conversions? Because at the end of the day, we're business owners, and what matters is revenue, LTV.
Indeed. And calculating and thinking of the target audience, and thinking on how they convert rather than how much they see. This is a very good point, I would say. And if we talk about what's actually like going on around OFM generally, there's a lot of noise about it. What do you think? What's actually real and what's exaggerated?
In terms of what exactly?
Well, when we're talking about this image of OFM business
Mm.
creators creating content, agency owners running profiles, and or what would you like distinguish the what's real and what's rather a myth that people just think of it and it's rather not true?
I guess it depends on if you're asking from the perspective of like people in our industry, like maybe misconceptions that people in our industry have, or the general public. Which one is more important to answer for you?
Well, we are here talking rather to agency owners,
Sure.
creators, managers. So let's from this perspective, yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think that the big misconceptions are that it's all about sex. It's not all about sex. It's about the fantasy. It's about cultivating the illusion of intimacy and how you can do that in the most compelling way possible. I think that the biggest misconception, I don't even know if I would describe it as a misconception or how I even like really conceptualize this. But I think the biggest thing that bothers me is like the lifestyle influencers who are pretending to be entrepreneurs or who are pretending to be like just the as somebody who is developing a course, this feels a little bit hypocritical, but like the standard sort of course seller archetype. I'm not going to call out names or shame anybody or whatever, but there's a very popular OFM YouTuber who is just like most of his content now is like, I went skiing this weekend and here's how much money I spent, and it's like how is that helpful to me in any way, right? Like it's like lifestyle porn, and I think that if you buy into that or that you get into this industry because you think like, if you're the type of person who sees a guy standing in front of a Lambo that he's probably like basically time sharing with four of his friends, and you're like, wow, I want to be like that guy, he has a nice car, I think you're completely missing the point. OnlyFans is an opportunity, a very rare opportunity, to make an extraordinary amount of money in a very short period of time with basically zero capital requirements, very low barrier to entry, no competitive moat. And if let's say that you really learn the business and you do really well and you make a few million, and then you're like, all right, cool, I'm going to buy a Huracan. What the fuck are you doing? Like, this money is not going to last forever. You should be using whatever you make in OFM to set yourself up for whatever comes next, for developing a business in another industry, or even staying an adult, and doubling down on whatever is working. So yeah, I think that those are the big, like, what's real and what's fake. The lifestyle influencer bullshit is all fake. And if you think that you want that, I would really encourage you to reevaluate your decisions. I promise you that I have a higher liquid net worth than like 99% of the OFM influencers, and I drive a 30-year-old Toyota. So,
Yeah. Well, there is actually a comment on that in the audience in the chat, YouTube chat here. There is one comment saying narrowing has proven to be very useful in the last month, thanks to Francis' help. Less views, but 35% more revenue than January. Basically unheard of in this business. And money is the metric that matters. Indeed.
yes, of course. That's what it really boils down to. Yeah, is like you have to, yeah, getting rid of the idea. I appreciate whoever said that. I appreciate that. I'm glad I was able to help you. Um, but yeah, the idea that like views are the most important metric, you just have to completely eliminate that. And I know it's hard because that's like what the entire industry was for the last 6 years. But you have to get a little bit more sophisticated in your thinking. And in my opinion, it's not even that hard. Like developing these skills, it's like a mental muscle that you have to work out a little bit. You have to get a little bit more creative, and you have to, like, God forbid, think about what your customer actually wants. Because ultimately, without a customer, you have no business. So
Yeah, indeed. And that's what definitely matters overall. And thinking of all these details and becoming sophisticated way, like profound way, definitely makes the difference for sure. You kind of answered one of the questions that I had in mind, speaking about ethics, like who should absolutely not get into this business.
oh,
But if we like continuing from this topic, what kind of personality is required to succeed in this space? What would you say
hmm.
about that?
I would say one more type of person who should not get into this business, especially as a beginner, is if you have like a hot temper or you're not good at managing like volatile personalities, one of the unfortunate realities of this industry is that there are a lot of damaged people in this business. There's a lot of unstable personalities. And if you are not adept at managing interpersonal relationships with people who might drive you a little bit crazy, if you can't do that in a professional and dignified way, you should absolutely not be in this business. Thinking about the personality traits that are required, one of them would be whatever the opposite of that is. So maintaining a level head, understanding that if somebody comes to you with a complaint that is unreasonable, that most likely that has very little to do with anything that you actually did, and more to do with like whatever's going on in that person's head. So there's the personality, like talent management side of the business. I think as an operator, OFM really rewards people who are generalists, or at least that's been my experience. I think that it's very rare for somebody to be, because OFM is so multidisciplinary, you have all of these disparate business functions that most people in this business are solopreneurs, or they have like maybe a solo partner. And so you've got chatting, which is basically an entire sales department, it's sales and business development. You've got the entire marketing engine, and there's a million different things that are associated with that. I'm great at organic marketing, but I might not be so good at email marketing. I know absolutely nothing about affiliate marketing. I've never purchased a paid ad in my life. So if you come to me and you ask me about any of those things, like I wouldn't know how to help. I wouldn't know the first thing about helping you with affiliate or paid marketing. I couldn't do it. Could I learn those things? Sure. But I think in general, OnlyFans rewards people who are good at understanding a wide variety of topics related to business at a very fundamental level, and then identifying where their weaknesses are, hiring people to, cover those weaknesses when they have the resources to do so, and doubling down on their strengths. Trying to think if there's, I think also just, it's going to sound a little bit glib, but I think like a mild psychopathy probably helps a little bit. You have to be a little bit deranged to be okay with like this, just like participating in the industry writ large. But those I would say are the three kind of core things.
Nice, indeed. Yeah, it sounds reasonable. And this is actually a quite shifting, pivoting environment where you learn new strategies, you see what works, what no longer works, and all
Yes.
these things, taking them into account. Would you say that all this OFM is rather a long-term career, or it's a short-term opportunity window?
Mm. I think that, trying to think of how to phrase this. If you, all of the skills that you learn in OFM, every single element of the business, everything that you learn will apply to whatever you do in the future. I have learned, so this isn't my first business, but I've learned so many valuable lessons, and I have improved so much as an operator in the last 4 years of doing OFM. Like my personal and professional growth it's been the most productive period of my life by a pretty wide margin. But I don't think that OFM will be around for a long time or even very much longer. I think that the window of opportunity is closing relatively quickly. I think you still probably have, let's say 2, 3, 4 years. I try not to put a timeline on these things just because I don't want people to like panic and think like, oh God, it's not even worth it to get into it. It's absolutely still worth it to get into it because you can make an extraordinary amount of money in a very short period of time. So I still think that OFM is a fantastic opportunity, but I think that the fan page industry is not the future of sex tech. I think that in general, like let's call it digital intimacy products, whether that's webcams or the tube sites, or a long time ago, you've spoken with Andy Woolmer, I think.
Mhm. He was actually in the
26 years.
comment section just a few minutes ago.
Oh, awesome. Shout out to Andy. I'm a huge fan of Andy. He's one of the
Yeah.
smartest guys in the business, and 26-year veteran of the industry, right? He's seen everything from, his first business was like licensing for adult DVDs. That was 26 years ago. That's not that long. That's not a long time at all. And the industry is radically different. It's changed so much so quickly, and there's huge sea changes that occur in, let's call it, the pornography and digital intimacy industry. very, very quickly. Like the generations are they iterate very fast, and I think that that's only going to continue. To the speed at which those iterations occur is only going to continue with the advent of artificial intelligence. But I don't see this as a long-term opportunity, but I still think that it is a fantastic opportunity if you are a young entrepreneur that's looking to start your first business. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of experience, but you're hungry and you're a fast learner. OFM is a fantastic business to get into, and there is still plenty of money on the table for you to make in the next, let's call it 24 to 36 months.
But let me ask you, start my question this way. AI chatbots, AI
Mhm.
generated content, AI models. Where does the human creator fit in all of this in, like, 2 years?
Yeah, this is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. So I'm going to try to keep it relatively concise. I think I'm going to set the stage for this
Hmm.
by explaining what I think is like kind of the near future of the industry. Let's call it like 3 to 4 years out. Um, there is a class of products that I call them AI harems, but they're like AI companion sites. And basically, all it is, I'm going to describe it for people that are unfamiliar with the products. These are websites like Candy.ai or SecretDesires.ai. The product is essentially this. Imagine that you subscribe to OnlyFans for a flat monthly fee, let's call it like $20 a month, and you get access to every creator on the OnlyFans platform. You can talk to anybody, you can get customs from anybody, you can request custom images, videos, you can create your own OnlyFans model. They talk to you 24/7 with zero delay. There's no, you're not waiting 3 or 4 or 5 minutes for a Filipino VA to who's pretending to be an 18-year-old Ukrainian girl to message you back or whatever the case might be. It's instant response. You have whatever you want. The girl looks like whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a girl. If you want to have a threesome with two aliens or something like that, or a spider girl or whatever, whatever floats your boat. If you can dream it, you can make it. And so it seems to me that in general, the trend in media is towards hyper personalization. That's true of social media. We're seeing that now. It's true of software. We're seeing that with the advent of agentic AI and like vibe coding and the ability to create tools for your organization, which
Hmm.
at a fraction of a cost of enterprise software. Everything, all trends seem to point towards hyper personalization. And so I think that these AI harem products are going to completely eat up the market for
Wow.
transactional spenders in the fan page ecosystem. That's kind of my near future prediction. What that means for human creators is that if you are not heavily invested in developing a trustworthy, scalable brand in a unique niche that is, I don't think anybody is necessarily safe from AI. There's no real insulating yourself against that. Um, but I do think that there is always going to be a desire for human to human
Yeah.
connection. There's always going to be some subset of people who, no matter how good the AI gets, they're not going to want to talk to them. And so what I see happening in the industry is a very small number of models who are highly committed to their customer, who are creating great social media content, great marketing content, and who are creating great OnlyFans content that really services a specific type of customer's needs. They're going to continue to make extraordinary amounts of money. But I think that pie is about to get a lot smaller, and the like average, the mediocre to average creators, let's call them. I'm not saying on a physical appearance basis, but I think that like if you were to stratify everybody into from 1 to 10 on like how good they are as a creator, 8, 9, and 10, you're still going to be millionaires. You're going to have no problems. You're going to perform exceptionally well in the age of AI because people are going to come to you for content. They're going to trust you, and you're going to be making great stuff. 7, you might be on the fringe there. You're still going to be able to make a living, but you're probably not going to get rich. 1 through 6 gets completely eaten by AI products, whether that's erotic chatbots, whether that's AI influencers. That whole portion of the creator economy just goes away in probably 3 or 4 years, I think.
Well,
So a bit of a doomerish take, but that's my realistic outlook.
as long as you say so, and you definitely sound like a guy who definitely knows what he's talking about. No,
I don't have
I
a crystal ball, so.
right, right. But still, with all the experience and the knowledge from, because you managed creators, you
Mhm.
consulted agencies, right? Uh, by the way, why did you decide to teach? And before you answer, there's actually an opinion on what you said
Oh,
in the
please, I'm
person
interested.
chat. Like top 1% verifiable real models will prevail. Rest is done, in my opinion.
I think that's more or less directionally correct. Yeah.
Ah,
And
question.
in some sense, that's kind of the way it is already, right? Like nobody outside of the top 1% on OnlyFans is really making a living doing it. What 1% these days is like 10K a month, maybe. Maybe it's better than that. I'm not 100% sure. I know that when I was still actively managing, top 0.01 was 250K a month and above. So I don't know how the math works out on that, but like if you're in the top 1% on OnlyFans, you're still only making six figures a year. It's a good living, but it's not like an amazing living, right? So yeah, I think it already is that way, and that stratification and that concentration at the top is only going to continue. Sorry, what was your?
Yeah,
I wanted to respond to that question, but what was your question again?
sure. We touched base on that at the beginning as well about teaching, about
Mm,
consulting. What
yeah,
does a course give you that consulting doesn't?
sure, yeah. I think the realistic answer is just time. I put a lot of effort into my consulting clients. So whether you're hiring me for media production, we had a job earlier this year where we flew out to my creative team flew out to South Africa and we created a brand strategy for a creator and we spent 2 weeks there shooting a bunch of incredible content. That's super fun. Or if we're just doing over the phone consulting, my base consulting engagement, like my most basic consulting engagement, is just I develop a creative package for a creator. I basically do all the front end work, everything related to pre-production I handle. Um, but even that is still quite a bit of effort. And so even that most basic level of consulting, realistically, I can probably only do if I were to do it 100% of the time, I could probably only do 10 a month or something. And right now, I charge $7,500 for a 90-minute call. And then prior to that 90-minute call, there's probably like, let's call it 3 days of research and prep. And so it's just like fundamentally not that scalable, right?
Hmm.
And on top of that, there's plenty of agencies that like need that service that can't afford that. And like the price is only going to go up as demand increases, not because I'm a greedy guy, but because like I have to increase prices, proportional to demand. Otherwise, I'm just going to be taking consulting calls 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel very fortunate to be in that position, but the course basically allows me to multiply that time and give something at a lower price point to a much wider segment of OFM agencies. Maybe, if you're just a beginner agency, if you're just starting and you want to know everything there is to know about organic marketing, you're not really in a position to hire me as a consultant. I'm not going to be able to help you that much because there's so much that you don't know that I'm not going to be able to help you with in a 90-minute call. But if I make 20 hours of course material that has, the video guides and scripts and like I've created a bunch of like custom web apps and like all this useful information to help concretize the knowledge that's contained in each module of the course, that's a much better product. And I'm going to be able to offer that at a much lower price point that you can actually afford even as a beginner. So
Yeah.
that's why I decided to do the course thing. It's definitely something that I was hesitant about at first because I think course sellers just have such a negative reputation, not just in OFM, but like writ large. But I'm in like a kind of the early access beta program. It actually starts tomorrow with my early test cohort. So I've got about 30 people in there who are going to be helping me go through the course. I'm going to be going through it with them live. They're going to be giving me feedback, and hopefully, I want to try to launch the finished product in mid-April. I think at that point, I'm going to have a really, truly exceptional product that is legitimately going to be able to help people who are at any stage of their OFM journey, whether it's an independent creator that has no idea what they're doing or a small agency that's just getting started, to extremely experienced agencies that are looking for like a training program to help elevate their creative and scale their creative teams. I think it's going to be great for everybody. I've put a ton of work into it. And yeah, it's not to plug too hard, but that's why I decided to do the course.
Yeah, and that actually makes sense. We also have video tutorials here in Only Monster, that explain everything, and then you may
Yeah.
ask other questions and all that. And I also have a few other business-related questions to your experience on running all that. And before that, I was about to ask how people can actually uh, get into this course, how can they get in touch with you? Maybe through some of your team representatives or something. And you say it's mid-April when it's launched. Maybe there is like some kind of waiting list or something.
Yes, there is. So if you are interested in the course, first of all, I would say I'm going to plug the free stuff first because I think that it's important. Like if you don't know who I am and you don't know about the content that I've created or like the value that I'm trying to put out into the ecosystem, I'm not going to ask you to buy a course. I want you to see how much effort I put into my free content that that's on YouTube that's available for everybody. And I think that once you watch the free content and you're like, wow, he's giving away this much for free, the paid product has to be like exponentially better. I hope that it is. Um, so check out the free stuff first. I have a YouTube. It's just Faceless Francis OFM. You can find that easily. I also have a Telegram community that's also completely free where you can come ask questions. I'm very active in there. So if you want to reach out to me directly, please don't DM me. Just go into the group. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them in the group so that everybody can benefit from the knowledge. I don't respond to too many private messages. And then if you're already, if you're already bought in and you're interested in the course, just go to facelessfrancis.com. It's the landing page. There's a waitlist form on the website. You fill out the waitlist, and you'll get a welcome email that'll tell you everything about the course. And anybody who joins the waitlist kind of gets put on like an early access list. So once the course actually launches, you're going to get a big discount relative to anybody who buys it later on as a kind of a thank you from me for expressing interest early
Hmm,
on. So
nice.
facelessfrancis.com is the place to go.
Great, great. And I also have a question to you from chat. And you guys, those who watch us, still have an opportunity to ask maybe one final question. Um, Considering the boundless possibilities of AI, what niches would you say haven't been as exploited by regular girls that AI could take over?
I think anytime somebody asks me a question about niche, I'll try to answer this quickly so that we can get to a couple more questions. Anytime that somebody asks me a question about niche, I think you just need to foundationally wipe away your idea of like there being a good niche or a bad niche or like a best niche. AI means that you can do anything creatively. And so the best niches in OnlyFans, in my opinions, are the ones that nobody's done yet, right? And so, going back again to that consulting client, they're making a killing now doing this like entrepreneurship ASMR, which is not really something we did a bunch of research that was part of the consulting packages. I looked up, I tried to find anybody that was doing anything remotely similar to that. The only people that were doing that were men. And so I think that's actually probably a good place to start. Is like think think from the perspective of okay, I have a model who in this case it's somebody who's interested in entrepreneurship. She's very smart, she's very hardworking, she has a lot of knowledge, she's built businesses herself. Um, how do I monetize that information? Who's the audience that I can reach with the thing that I am most interested in? So think from with AI, that question just becomes way more open-ended, and you've got to think who is the perfect audience. So again, going back to the example of like the redneck girl, that could easily just be like an AI cowgirl, right? Um, think about like long haul truckers in the United States, right? It's a perfect demographic. These are guys that have lots of disposable income. They're making like between 60 and 100K a year. All they do all day, 14 hours a day, is drive around a truck. They're
Yeah.
incredibly lonely. They have no opportunity to find female companionship. And a majority of them are probably already using OnlyFans. So think about who your dream demographic is, and then what is the kind of content or what's the niche that I can go into that absolutely drills that dream demographic. So for that creator, it might be like, I don't know, she reviews truck stop bathrooms, or she like goes to gas stations and she eats, like gas station junk food and does food reviews. What is your audience doing? These are things that truckers do, right? They go into gas stations and they buy shitty food. Which gas stations have the best food? That's legitimately helpful to them. And if you're a hot girl that's doing something that's legitimately helpful for them, they're going to trust you and they're going to buy content from you and they're going to fall in love with you and they're going to spend a lot of money.
Hmm. It's interesting how you put it, like not just do what other people who succeeded do, but rather do what actually anyone else hasn't thought about yet. And just, I also heard some very large agency owners say, like, if you do what everyone else do, like you'll get the same result as everyone. But if you do something extraordinary, you'll get extraordinary results. This is a very
Yes.
wise thought. I think we have time for maybe one last question, and it's a bit like sophisticated. Also, just all our entire
Great.
conversation, um, going from zero to $300,000 a month without ads. What was the real inflection point, and what was the actual lever? What moved the needle more than anything else?
Um, I think there was there were a couple things. Um, One of them is related to marketing and kind of an aha moment that I had about like the power of good creative. The funnier one that I'll talk about first is that when I got into OFM, I didn't know that OFM existed as an industry. I knew absolutely nothing. So I didn't know that chatters existed. And so our entire like workflow for my first model for probably the first year, maybe even 18 months that I did OFM, we didn't have chatters because I didn't know how to give permissioned access to people. I didn't know that that was a thing. I didn't know that that would increase revenue. It didn't occur to me that like people were there to chat and buy content. I thought it was all transactional. So we came up with these really elaborate like PPV menus, and it was just me sitting at a computer all day, basically taking orders and like selling people content off of this menu. And I scaled because I was laser focused on organic social from day one. We scaled that account to 90K a month just on PPV sales with no chatting at all.
Wow.
So the real answer to your question is the big inflection point on revenue was just as soon as we incorporated chatting, we had our first 6-figure month. And then the next month it was 150, and then the next month it was 200. And so once we had that element in play, that's when the real money started coming in. But I've been laser focused on organic social from day one. And I think part of the reason for that is because I didn't know any better. I didn't know paid ads existed for OnlyFans. I didn't know about affiliate networks. I didn't know about SFS. I didn't know about GG. I didn't know anything. And so from my perspective, the only way to grow was through organic social. So I just figured out how to get really fucking good at organic social. Because it's all, from my perspective, it's all there was.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's probably a lesson there. Maybe like being myopically focused on something that's really high leverage is a good thing, even if it's at the expense of other opportunities. I think that there's a limited number of things that you can be truly really good at. I think that I got lucky in that I sort of like accidentally discovered that organic social was the highest leverage thing that you could possibly do in OnlyFans. Maybe if I had like found paid ads first, I would not have been as successful. I wouldn't have made as much money. I probably wouldn't be consulting because paid ads it's a pretty commoditized set of information. So I feel very fortunate. I think that that is probably the real answer is just I got lucky and I accidentally started focusing on the thing that happened to be the best thing to focus on. So just be lucky is my answer. That's the inflection.
Just be lucky.
Everyone,
Nice
yeah.
strategy. Wow, that is amazing. All this, even from a perspective of a person who never actually had a chance to run an agency myself, I found all that quite interesting. And I see value in what you say, and those who actually get the course consulting from you, they definitely are gonna be benefiting from all this. I see value in what you say, and I really appreciate all the time that you took to describe your journey, to describe points that were interesting to me as well in the first place. And listening to you was a pleasure indeed, and I mean it. Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Francis, this was a genuine pleasure for me. I hope our audience also enjoyed listening to
Hope so.
Faceless Francis. And guys, as always, Only Monster is here for bringing you interesting individuals from inside the industry. And I hope you enjoyed. So, yeah, all the links are going to be in the comments. So hit like, subscribe, and don't miss the next podcast episode. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again, Francis. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
Bye bye.